statement of reasons.
Okay.
Right?
From the tribunal.
From the tribunal.
Right.
Right? And what the statement of reasons says, you can read it yourself if you want. It says Dr. Senigratna was calm, coherent, and lucid at the hearing.
Yeah.
He did not give an appearance of being mentally ill. He says that he is not. He also says that Dr. Neil, a psychiatrist who has treated him over many years, does not consider him mentally ill.
And that's what you might need to provide with your Dr. Neil.
The tribunal, however, is not prepared to place reliance on that information in the absence of a report from Dr. Neil. Right. So now what the tribunal has said is that I was calm, coherent, and lucid at the hearing, and did not give an appearance of being mentally ill. So now the tribunal has a responsibility, if they find me not to be mentally ill, to discharge me off the order. Rather than discharging me off the order, even though I came across as quite mentally normal to them, they decided to consider instead and accept the content of what they're calling Dr. Al-Sudani's report. Right? Mm-hmm. And they quoted, according to Dr. Al-Sudani's report, Dr. Senigratna has a psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified. Mm-hmm. And etc. And then quotes a whole lot of the things that you had put in your report. Now, what it says is that Dr. Senigratna criticizes Dr. Al-Sudani's report on a number of grounds as described above.
I think you're entitled to.
I am. However, and they also say the tribunal accepts that Dr. Senigratna's father wrote to authorities expressing the opinion that Dr. Senigratna is mentally ill.
This was probably
and that this occurred in the context of long-running conflict between father and son over medical and political issues. The tribunal also accepts that Dr. Senigratna's father has long been a vocal supporter of the Tamil Tigers, an organization widely regarded as a terrorist organization.
And is that based on your
This is all based on the evidence that I've provided. In the light of this background, comments by Dr. Senigratna about his father spreading lies about him, or about his father being involved in a terrorist organization, do not necessarily have any delusional content at all. The tribunal accepts, similarly, the tribunal accepts that Dr. Senigratna has published books and has musical talent, and so comments by him on such topics do not necessarily have an element at all of grandiosity. The Garden Party incident, likewise, is not necessarily an indicator of mental illness.
Well, not necessarily mental illness, but I think it reflects levels of functioning, things like that.
My level of functioning at that time was very good. Right? I was irrigating. For years I've lived in this house, and I've been slowly doing little bits of gardening. Like I built a little pond down the end there about 3 years ago. I had then decided that I was going to build some tadpole breeding ponds around the side of it. Now it got out of hand because the neighbor objected to it. When I ran accidentally, some of the water was overflowing into the yeah. Now that is not an indicator of mental illness. I have got beautiful photographs of what I was doing, of the landscaping, of the rock garden, and all of that I have abandoned now, right? For the reason partly of the expense of it, and also the fact that I had so much that I kept on having police coming to my house and turning off my taps, right?
And the heat water.
A big water bill. Yeah. Okay, so that's why I decided that I wasn't going to do that. I had hoped that I might get some support from the council because I was breeding amphibians. I was breeding endangered frogs and things like that.
And the council sometimes they agree.
The council weren't going to do anything about it, right? Anyway, it says that on the other hand, staff at the hospital have had the opportunity to closely observe Dr. Senigratna on many occasions. Right? Now, what I'm saying is feel knows me much better than the staff in the hospital. Right? If you know about the culture of the hospital, once you're in there, the staff don't talk to you. It's not like they're trying to get to know you. Right? You're flat out seeing a doctor. You just stay there for weeks, and then maybe the doctor pops in. You're just waiting and waiting, right? So it's good as if the people, and also when you're in the hospital, it's a very abnormal situation. It's a stressful situation. You're angry because you're being taken away from your home, right? You're not allowed to stay where you want. You get locked up in a room with some kind of forensic order, right? You've got the choice of sitting in the courtyard and sneaking a cigarette in and drinking coffee, or just sitting there and drinking coffee, right? It's a very unhealing environment, right? If you put me in that environment, the only reason that I'm succumbing myself to these injections is because I'm so scared of that environment, right? I hate the hospital, right? And what I'm saying is that this hospital causes illness, it creates illness, because if you put a person in an unhealthy environment, right, which is dirty and it is punitive, where basically if you say a word out of place, you get punished, right? If you stand up to the authorities, you basically get punished, right? Now that is, like I asked Daniel Varghese, who is the person who came up with this psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified, how would you like it, Daniel, if I diagnosed you, right? And he said, not very much, right?
We used to dialogue, because I went there a few times to meetings where we were looking at planning discharge, and you and him had quite a good rapport with each other in terms of dialogue and talking about.
Well, compared to my rapport with Satani, yes, I had better rapport with Daniel Varghese, right?
So he did take into account the things you were saying.
No, but Daniel Varghese has said that he couldn't work out whether or not my father, he says, I'm not an investigator. I don't know whether your father was supposed to have tigers. And then he has written in the report that I believe that I really supported these delusions about my father as evidence of, initially they were saying schizophrenia, and now they've said psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified.
So psychotic disorder is not based just on those beliefs about your father.
Okay, so tell me, what do you believe? Firstly, what do you think psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified, means? What do they mean to you?
To me, it means that there are phases where a person experiences psychotic symptoms, not necessarily hallucinations, not necessarily delusional beliefs, but there is a disorganization of the mind which reflects in a disorganized lifestyle, which could then lead on to either interpersonal difficulties, getting into trouble with neighbors, family members, things like that. I have always thought that a lot of your problems could probably be secondary to cannabis.
But what do you mean by, like, when it says psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified?
That means it's...
I looked up, because this is what this report says, right? That in their opinion, they have to consider whether or not the patient, does the person have a mental illness? And they have written, the tribunal accepts, on balance then, the tribunal accepts that Dr. Seniratna has a mental illness, namely psychotic disorder not otherwise specified, which is currently well controlled. Now what I'm saying is, I'm objecting to the label of psychotic disorder not otherwise specified, just as much as I was objecting to the label of schizophrenia, because there's a fine line between the two of them, right? Now,
not really.
I'll tell you why. Because disorder not otherwise specified.
It does make it transient.
Psychotic disorder not otherwise specified doesn't officially exist anymore.
It doesn't.
It came into existence with the DSM-4 and it went out of existence with the DSM-5.
It's still in ICD-10.
It's in ICD-10. Okay. Well, why should we in Australia accept the ICD-10?
Because it's the international classified diagnostic manual.
Yeah,
literature.
what is it based on?
Okay, why should then we accept what's written in DSM 4 or 5?
Shouldn't.
Exactly, because that's specific
We should.
only to American society
Okay.
and the way they work their
Okay.
medicine.
Right, okay, so you base your style of psychiatry on the ICD-10.
You're asking difficult questions.
It's a very important question.
It is an important question.
Right, because I have spent the last 20 years arguing against that mentality.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Like what I'm saying is that the idea of statistically classifying symptom constructs, right, and then coming up with these labels,
Yeah.
right, but the labels are very damaging to people socially and psychologically.
The thing is, I think there's still a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health.
Of course,
You see, a diagnostic label doesn't necessarily mean that you are demeaning
there is no
a
stigma
person.
associated with mental health.
There is.
There is a stigma associated with mental illness.
Yeah, okay.
Right, that's very important.
Yeah.
They're opposites to each other, right? Like I found, like, this is somewhat a problem that is going on all the time in academia, right, in healthcare workers, in politicians, right? Yeah, like I noticed this Joe Hockey, right? Joe Hockey, right? Joe Hockey, who was arguing about the budget, where they're taking $7 as a co-payment to put into this fund, $20 billion fund, right? It's a research fund, right? And for the first 2 years, they're going to just collect money from $5 from every GP visit to try and collect $20 billion fund, and then they're going to dole it out or award it to the fund to try and find cures, right, for, and this is where it gets interesting. He says we need to find cures for diabetes, right, and
Probably cancer.
Dementia, Alzheimer's, and mental health. Right? We don't need a cure for mental health. The point is, he's just repeating these lines that come out, trotted out over and over again. You know, that money, I know that money, the way it is currently spent, is all going into drug research, as if they're going to find a drug to cure dementia. Right? Now, what I'm saying is the social factors, such like people feeling that they're too old to learn, the things that I've discussed with you, are much more important and much more realistic to do something about.
Why don't you write a letter to him?
To who?
Joe Hockey.
Well, to try and break through to Joe Hockey and I don't have a tendency to spend a lot of time writing to politicians, but I am thinking of writing something about it, you know, because I think that I have a personal opinion that's valuable on this, because I think that likewise, for example, that my friend has got high blood pressure. He's been diagnosed with high blood pressure when he was 21. He's taking 2 different high blood pressure tablets, right? Now, I asked him something that he'd never been asked before, which is whether he was very stressed when his high blood pressure was diagnosed, and he was, right? Now, since then, he has never been off those blood pressure tablets, right? He's in his mid-30s now. So, I suggested that he monitored his blood pressure. Now, he's a blood pressure monitoring machine which he never uses. Right? He's even left it in Melbourne. Right? Now what I'm saying is monitor your blood pressure, but monitor it, measure it before you play music and after you play music. Before you listen to music and after you listen to music, to see that the music is one of the things that has an effect on actually controlling your blood pressure. Right? Now he's a musician, so there's a good chance when he spends lots of hours every day playing guitar. Right? So what I'm saying is these sort of things are measures that GPs could take all the time. You know, when somebody comes in with high blood pressure, when you consider that you're spending, the government is spending anyway $35 or $50 with GP visits, right? It doesn't cost much in this day and age to go out and buy blood pressure machine. The government could even subsidize the buying of blood pressure.
They do often, my experience is that people with high blood pressure often GP don't ask them to keep the blood pressure diary for a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
So they can kind of
absolutely.
And see whether certain interventions like loss of weight or exercise,
these are the
are helpful.
Yeah, these are the things that you said loss of weight, exercise, yoga, right? Now, when I was doing general practice, I focused a lot on loss of weight and exercise, and doctors have been doing that for decades, right? Adding yoga to that is something very new, right? So it's only the progressive doctors who also suggest yoga, right? The progressive doctors will also suggest Tai Chi, right? Because Tai Chi is another thing that has actually been shown to be effective, right? What I'm saying is add music to that as well.
Yeah, sure, why not?
You know, so these are the things that I'm planning on writing on. And so the way I work is I'll write something on it, or present my information on YouTube. You know, saying, how about this idea, and then post it on YouTube, and I also post it on my Scribbly site.
Yeah.
So
going back to this, why did they, if they said all of those things, what was the,
why did they
find in favour of continuing the order rather than
why?
rescinding the order?
Because they accepted your report, and that's what they put it down to. Dr. Al-Sudani's report. They weren't going to disagree with Al-Sudani's report.
But they did say
and according to the tribunal, sees no reason to doubt Dr. Al-Sudani's evidence that psychotic symptoms have been observed during periods of exacerbation, and that these have included thought disorder, disorganized behavior, and persecutory beliefs. Right? Now, what I'm saying is, what specifically are you talking about when you say I have thought disorder, right? Or that I had thought disorder? Because thought disorder in psychiatry means something very specific. When they say formal thought disorder, they're talking about thought insertion, thought broadcasting, they're talking about auditory hallucinations, they're talking about delusions of control, they're talking about these are signs of what we call formal thought disorder, right? Now I'm saying I have never satisfied the criteria for thought disorder, and in fact if you go back and look at the notes, right, that people have written on their admission notes, formal thought, FTD, 0, right? So I wasn't showing signs of formal thought disorder. So they had accepted that I had thought disorder. Don't forget there's a psychiatrist on the tribunal as well. Right? So they've accepted the statement that I have thought disorder when I didn't have thought disorder. Disorganized behavior, I can show you the folders of the work that I was doing at that time, the work that I was doing on the internet, Certainly my house is a little bit messier when you came around than it is now, but that just comes and goes. At the moment I'm quite tidy.
You are?
Right. But I have a lot of stuff to tidy.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm working on a particular subject, papers
Would be.
We make the...
Right. Okay. So what I'm saying is that when they're saying disorganized behavior, right, my behavior was very organized.
I think they have been.
You got more organized than that.
Probably neighbors and
my neighbors don't like me. Right? My neighbors don't like me. And it's the important thing, right? That every time I have done anything that my neighbors could find fault with, right? They have run up.
Go by what has been documented in the notes. And like I said, probably I did mention in the report that since I have seen you over the last few months, you are much more settled, there are no issues as such. But in the past, this was before I met you, when you had all these number of different admissions to hospital, there have been periods where you have been accusing people of people in the Turi forest, like people are buried. But there is reports that you have said.
No, but that's the point. What I'm saying is, right, these reports, right, nobody has clarified. You're the first time, like I've read this before, that I said that they were burying people in Turi forest, right? What I said to, I can't remember which neighbor, is did you know that they used to use Turi forest as a shooting range? Right? Now that's not the same thing, right? And this is how the word gets twisted around. They used Turi forest as a shooting range during the Second World War.
Yes.
Right?
But since you've been what I would call more stable in terms of your mood and mental health, we've had no complaints from the neighbours, we've had no complaints from the minister's office, we've had no complaints from David Compton's office.
Who got the minister's office? When did the minister's office send a complaint to you?
Well, because there was issues around other people other neighbours mentioning it to their local councillor, and their local councillor talking to the minister about it. So those were issues. They were way back now. So like a year ago, 6 months ago.
Yeah, look what.
Only a year ago, I was told, in fact by the same guy, Tom Hurd, that they had reports that I was walking naked in the street. Of course, it's not true. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot, when I was talking about Kanchana Dialvis and Tom Hurd. Tom Hurd told me that he reported to Kanchana Dialvis. This guy, Sagir Parker, admitted that he reports to Paul Schneider and Janice Gomez. They both say they don't want to be involved in my treatment, the abuse. But they send a spy. And that's what Sagir Parker is. He's a spy for Paul Schneider and Janice Gomez. That's who he reports to.
So what I'm saying is, since you've been on the injection, since you've been seeing us on a regular basis, we've had no complaints around those issues. You're still able to do all of the things that you like to do. No one's forcing you.
Firstly, let me explain.
You've got better relationships with Sarah and Zoe that you didn't have before.
He doesn't give a hoot. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that some months later I rang Kanchana Dialvis and spoke to her. And she said, "You're mistaken. I didn't have anything to do with it." And I mentioned Tom Hurd. She said, "I don't know Tom Hurd. I don't." So I rang Tom Hurd. And he did know Kanchana Dialvis. Absolutely outrageous what these people thought they'd get away with. And then, after I was taken off the treatment authority last year, after 10 years of Nigel Lewin, I rang Nigel Lewin and said he no longer works for Queensland Health. But I've rung him a few times. If he hears my voice, he hangs up. He's done the damage and now he's trying to get off scot-free, but he's not going to.
I have always had a fantastic relationship with Zoe. I was just being prevented from speaking to her. In fact, the reason that they were preventing me from speak to Zoe is they knew that Zoe won't come back to Brisbane. Right? That's the only reason. It's nothing to do with me. Zoe not wanted to speak to me. Zoe was thrilled to speak to me.
Yeah, but why did they?
I'll stop there. I don't want to share this information about Zoe.